study. Thank you so much. I see that I've got all these lights on here as I'm going to be going into a study here for us to be able to enjoy what the Lord has for us in our new study, multidimensional heaven we're talking about today, as you saw in the different titles here. We are going to go into something very, very strong and very, very deep. And we're going to walk into it as you would head into the sea. We're going to walk from the shoreline and start picking things up here. A lot of people will limit so much. Well, heaven, it's just this. Or I cringe when I hear people, even fine Christians, say, and you and I have heard this too, if you've been with us. Somebody will actually go in the comment section and say, well, if my pets aren't with me, it's not going to be heaven, or I don't want to go. What are you saying? Or if I can't play basketball, then I don't understand how I could enjoy heaven. Or somebody else says, well, I don't want to have to see these people over here. If I have to see them, then heaven's not going to be enjoyable. And all of these statements, and may I say this, they sometimes get ridiculous. Why? Because people say, in my mind and in my grasp, this is what heaven's going to be. And brothers and sisters, it's time for us to open up our hearts and see the beauty of what the scripture says. We have no idea. 1 Corinthians 2:9, it's beyond our imagination, and that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to go in, and this last time, as I got going, and I'm going to forego the announcements other than telling you this weekend you're going to see part of this, and it will be live streamed as far as, Pastor Bobby will live stream it. Oak Ridge Baptist Church, Oak Ridge, Tennessee. We're going to start off our Heaven Q&A conference over in Oak Ridge, one day, 2 meetings, morning and evening, and I will be talking about along this. We are going to take this up another level in talking about heaven, the details of heaven, the beauty of God, the dimensions of God. We're going to let me say hi, let me get moving here, and then we are going to take off here. A quick hello to, here we go, can't go too fast. Our wonderful moderators, Johnny and Lisa, thank you for helping out. And I know that they're there taking notes as well, because these two are studious, just the lovers of the wonders of God. And so they are just great examples to us. Darius and Nikki, wonderful. Good to see you here. Red and Sandy, thank you for joining. And Stella and Nico, glad to have you here. Thank you so very much. There's Betty from Toronto. Beautiful city. Let me tell you, I love visiting there. Red, yes, wonderful to see you. Penny Collins, wonderful to see you here. And welcome to the farmhouse. Donna and Teresa giving you back a wave. Mary Jane from UK, from Suffolk, thank you so much for being here. Neona, beautiful greeting back to you. Very, very kind in what you're telling us here in your wonderful greeting. Christina is helping out. Boy, I appreciate that. And absolutely. Julia, I got your message as I came back in. As I may have told you, maybe I didn't say, I'm trying to remember. We got back on Saturday, had an accident with the car. I was traveling across. The best way to tell you is I hit a ditch in the dark, a poorly lit section of road, and I was swinging in, and out of nowhere, there was just a ditch in the middle of the road. No warning, no sign, no curbing, nothing. And I dropped down about, I would think it's no exaggeration to say the car just dropped. I didn't speak 2 feet down, chunked a piece of real estate up. It's hanging on the side of the car, the front bumper. I don't know how I didn't blow out a tire. I mean, we smashed it and everything. So I'm taking the car in. We were able to make it back even through a snow squall. And so I received your mail, and I'm going to catch up on everything. A lot of things just kind of threw me yesterday in getting things. So I'm so glad that your prayers have kept us safe in our travels here. And as I go on out, just pray that I can get the car all up and running here. It's running okay, but there's a definite shaking. I think maybe there's damage to the struts or something like that in it. It happens. South Carolina and Tennessee, there are stretches of road. There's no lighting anywhere, and it's so pitch black, even your headlights can't pick up on it. I have no idea why the highway felt that this was an idea here. I don't know how many people probably have had that same accident. Wonderful. Indiana, Roger, I will be there on the 27th, 28th, and then March 1st and 2nd. Albion, looking forward to seeing you too. Thank you so much. Julia, I am so sorry your grandma passed away. Then we are going to have prayer in here on our national prayer chain. Please, Julia, pass this over to Andrea. We can get this on our national prayer list. And God bless you. I was unaware of that. Thank you so much for letting us know. Friends, put this down for Julia. She has been just so faithful in being with us all of this time over from the UK. And Julia, would you please send this on to Andrea and let's get a prayer chain started for your peace and your just in this time. I believe that you may have told me in the past your grandmother was a believer in Christ. So please just let us know on this, on the peace that passes all understanding. We're praying Philippians 4:7 for you, okay? Eric, good to see you. Thank you so much, Eric. He is Goose. That is his nickname here. Marie, good morning to you. And as we go through all of our friends here, let's get rolling. I appreciate you being here. And I'm going to ask because we're going to get into it very serious here and very deep. Please limit the conversations back and forth. Take notes on this. I'm going to turn the camera around and actually walk you through a PowerPoint here and let you see this for yourself, okay? So here we go. I'm going to keep an eye on the time and be respectful and try to get come back and get to some answers and questions and things like that, okay? So when we start looking at the our concept of heaven, in our minds, we put boundaries on. Well, heaven's so far that way, or it's going to be so deep. The gravity's going to be so much. There's got to be a little cloud action there, and then we're all in robes, and it's pretty monochromatic. And we're going to be happy, but, kind of bored. And then we'll have people, throwing out these things like, well, it can't be heaven unless I have my pets there. Or, just very, very cringy claims. Like I said, there was a young man on here about a year ago. Well, if there's no basketball, I can't see how I'd enjoy heaven. Or other people like, well, I don't like this person over here. And I know they're a Christian. Do I have to put up with them? And all of these things that are so very limited. Talk about God. Then I'll ask one person and they will say, and I quoted the article that I was reading by a gentleman out of Sydney, Australia, who's a teacher of New Testament at, I think it's at Moore College over in Sydney, Australia. And he said, here's the concept. This person says, well, God's a policeman. You do something wrong, you're going to get in trouble. This one says, well, he's a benevolent being, and, you can pretty much do anything you want. He's got to let you into heaven. Everybody makes it. Somebody else says, well, he's kind of like a neighbor. You talk with him when you want to, but then you can brush him away when you need to. And we have this one-dimensional concept of God. And for that matter, well, let's be generous. We might have a three-dimensional look at heaven. Okay, so when we take a look at this, and what we're saying is, that's all I can comprehend, and that's all it's going to be. And so the dictionary of our understanding gets shut at about this much, and we forget we are talking about a multi-dimensional God. Now, what I'm going to do is take this, and I think maybe I do this once a year. I'm actually going to turn the camera around and walk you through a presentation. Buckle your seatbelts, okay? Because this may stay with it. Don't get frustrated. Please do not become anti-intellectual on this. Well, this is too much and I don't want to. Every once in a while, I would have a student like that, and I would take him to task. Well, I don't know. This just seems like so much. This is the way you're going to approach life. You don't want to do this, okay? And all. So let's be responsible and let's go in and let's take a look at this. And let me move this back in our talk here. I want to talk about our concept of God and talk about our concept in approaching life. Now, in this, when we go into this and I start going, you see the reflection of my glasses because I'm going to take you right in a second here over to the laptop. What we're going to do is visualize this multidimensional God. I'm going to tell you there is an ocean of understanding here. We are going to just walk, not even in ankle deep, in the time that we have. We've only got about 15 minutes. But I want you to see this because I need us all to stop putting God into the comic book that is our reasoning. Look, I've done it in the past after salvation. Well, God can't do this, and I don't understand this. We're going to get bored. This is only going to be so that there's an edge to have, all this kind of stuff, okay? Let's start. Let's just start expanding the reality of what God tells us in the scripture. In Ephesians chapter 3, verses 9 through 11, Paul says, one of the wonders that I am allowed to share to other leaders, to share to their people, is the multidimensional wisdom of God. multidimensional. Some of your translations would say manifold or multifaceted. Multidimensional. A facet is a dimension, okay? So before we start saying, well, I've got it all down, we only live in three facets, three dimensions, all right? Let's talk about God and how sometimes we hold him to one or two dimensions, and we're going to draw this out. The study I'm going to show you is introduced, and this is totally secular, but I'm going to take it into the sacred here. Santosh Dumar is the founder of Digitash, and he is a former aeronautical engineer. And he says this, I want to talk about dimensions and how sometimes we limit in dimensions. And I'm going to take this and follow Santosh's presentation and take it over on how we Christians limit it. You know, we learn so much and then we want to go back to our trivia or our, scrolling through the phone because we don't want to study deep. Then we wonder why people aren't excited about heaven. Then we wonder why, well, we don't even get excited about heaven. All right, follow this. Here, let me see if I can remember. Here we go. Okay, let's start this one off. Santosh says this. These are his notes down here. I give him full credit on his study. This is our study. This is what? We're going to take a sheet of paper, put a dot on there. There's no direction, no magnitude to that, as he says, and this doesn't have any dimension. So technically, this is a zero-dimension reality right there, okay? Then we move on. Now, if we go ahead and we draw a straight line along this x-axis, we can measure the length, okay, but there's only one dimension, okay? It's a one-dimensional presentation right there, but we do have a dimension now, okay? Moving on. Now, we're going to take it and we're going to move this into a square. When we do that, it's still flat, on the screen, but now we can measure length and width. That has two dimensions. Now what we're going to do is drop down and make this into a cube. Now we can measure length, width, and height. This is now three dimensions, and this is our reality. This is it. I show you the room here, and you're going to see it in three dimensions. No one says, oh, look at that. There is some, there's a fifth dimension, there's a fourth dimension, there's some weird stuff's going on. You're grasping it in three dimensions. Even as you're watching this, you're seeing it in three dimensions. The depth of my hand to the camera and where the laptop and then the background shelving and the pottery and things like that. You've grasped it. Now, if somebody says, oh, yeah, we all live in a 3D world. No, not really. Because, see, here's what Einstein said. Well, now, the cube doesn't stay stationary in reality. It starts moving as we go through. Everything is moving. So when he says this in 1905, he presented the special theory of relativity, which says this, may I present to you this movement of where it was, but it's here. That's a dimension, because technically those little facets on either side are not the same from here to here. So a dimension, it improves on it, it moves it, it modifies it, and that dimension is called time, all right? If it's stationary, we're at three dimensions if it never moves. But if it does, how do you pinpoint the exact location, he says? Well, what we do is time is now introduced into there, okay? Again, that dot had no direction, no magnitude until it moved into a line to make it into one dimension. The cube now is moving, okay? For something to be a dimension, it has to have a direction and a magnitude. And we can measure this. Seconds, minutes, hours, things like that. And it's always flowing in one direction. It's still limited. It always moves forward to us. Fourth dimension, okay? Now, you see these as we talked about it, okay, the dimensions. Then it's moving. But here's the thing. When we do this, then something. The first dimension has, this one here, has two of these dimensions in it. There are actually two. All right. The second dimension, see, each time that you move, you're adding another dimension in drawing. So this second dimension has four one dimensions, right? One dimension, four of them. Now, move over here. The third dimension has six two dimensions, six sides, six two dimensions. Now, then when you start moving it, in the fourth dimension, things start moving. Now it starts moving into what he says is going to have 8 three dimensions, okay? If you do that, and like I said, I'm going through this in a real summarized way, and trust me, I'm a layman sharing this, all right? But watch. If you're to draw this, Sumar said, all right, ready? That's a drawing of our existence here because this is moving. So each of these facets is another dimension. This is where, when we say, well, God is just this, just three dimensions, you're saying God is just three dimensions. Let's just say we're just saying God in time. This is a tesseract, 4 dimensions, all right? It has 8 cubes total in it, all right? If you're going to draw it, this is what, in geometry, what it's going to look like. Think of it, this is a facet describing an attribute of God, all right? Now, watch this. Let's just say God has one other dimension outside of our known. These are the 4 dimensions in which we go. And we've already realized, well, there's much more to God than we have limited him. Let's add one dimension, just one other dimension of which we do not know. It's outside of the universe. And we know God exists in eternity. So let's just add one. How many different dimensions would we have to address on God? That's just one. That's just one other dimension trying to describe God. Or in his manifold wisdom of creating heaven, that now changes from us trying to describe heaven. Oh, this is all heaven in my mind. This is just putting one other dimension in here outside of what if we added just 2? God just has 2 other dimensions that we're not familiar with. There's how you're going to try to describe God. Or if heaven only has 2 dimensions of which we're not familiar, what if there were 3 extra dimensions of God or of heaven? Each of those is a facet on how you're going to describe God. Well outside of the social dimension, the spiritual, the holiness, all of these things, okay? What if it was just 4? This is just 4. Ed Decker, the author, says, there's no reason for us to deny or try to refute the fact that God has 100 more dimensions. I'm just going to tell you, what if God only had 5 other dimensions outside of what we know? The Creator God creating us. This will just give you an idea of how many attributes, all right? And I'll leave you with it. What if God only had 6 other dimensions? If he had in total, limited, only 10 dimensions to God. There you go. It's called a Deckeract. This is if God only had 10 dimensions. Are you starting to grasp the depth, the width, the height, the wonder? And you see this here, okay? When you start looking at this. So when people say, what do you think your mom is enjoying in heaven? What do you think your brother's enjoying in heaven? I said, I can't even begin to tell you the start. Let's just put this on heaven. Because there are things of which I'm not familiar. Time has totally been redone. Isaiah 57:15, God inhabits eternity. 2 Peter 3:8, a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day in heaven. Psalm 90, it tells you very, very clearly that God is from everlasting to everlasting, all right? You're starting to get the idea, okay? I want you to get this. Just grasp this. Now, here's what I want you to also take into consideration. There's so much more, and we only have this limited amount of time. Hey, I will tell you something. We're going to go in tomorrow night over on TikTok. I'm going to take the time in the evening. We're going to have a full hour together, and we'll get into more of this, all right? I have just started. I have stuff, books and papers all the way around me right here. And just a mess, okay, on this, because we're going to get serious about this. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to just imagine this as you get going, and you can use your imagination on this. To somebody who says, this is all heaven's going to be to me, these ridiculous claims like, if I can't do this, then it's not heaven. If I can't have this, then it's not heaven. And I say this very kindly, how arrogant of you. Where'd you get the idea that you're God, that you're dictating to him? Yet I become more and more militant in my understanding of what God has. Is any of you, and maybe sadly enough somebody does, somebody brings you a Christmas present and they put it in your lap and you go, you're serious? This is all you have? All right, or your birthday. and you have been laden with wonders and other thing, and you know that pile of presents doesn't reach 5 feet. I'm not satisfied. How very, very arrogant when we say, I've got heaven figured out and I don't like it, or I've got heaven here and all this. Okay, so I want you to do this. You go and get your mug, go out to the Pacific Ocean. I talked about this earlier. Go to the edge of the Pacific Ocean. We'll supply the buckets and carry it away. Start emptying out the Pacific Ocean one mug at a time. You have a better chance of completing that than you can of describing heaven. I'm serious. The more I study, the more look, we talked about this, 2 Kings chapter 20. God, to show his omnipotence, turned backwards time. He reversed time, 2 Kings chapter 20. Joshua chapter 10, he stopped time. This is just one dimension showing he has total control. You have a better chance of emptying out the Pacific Ocean one mug at a time than you have of actually trying to come in here and saying, this is all of heaven. Start opening up your heart and mind, because we are going to start into this wonderful study on this, and stop limiting this to a New York Times cartoon of people walking around with robes and walking through clouds. That is the secular world, and that's what the enemy, Revelation chapter 13, verse 6, wants us to do. Oh, it's just a limited thing. It's just a boring existence. Don't think about it. Live for the here and now. Okay? All right. Well, let's go ahead. So much more I want to say here. All right, let me take a look at the time. All right, I got 6 minutes. I'm going to reverse this and take us into a Q&A time prior to the back. Oh, I should be looking right behind me in the clock on the wall here. Here we go. Moving on down. Boy, I appreciate you being here, friends. This is just a wonderful time of us all being together. Thank you for your prayers. Going to see the car and see if we can't get the car fixed before I get back out. All right. Okay. Andy, what you said on TikTok, could Jesus have been talking to Moses and Abraham at the same time when the disciples saw him rise? Talking to Moses and Abraham. I'm not sure of the context, Andy, that you're talking about. When you say could, well, anything is possible, but I don't know your context, and I apologize. I'm not exactly sure into what you're, when he was in his ascension, in what reference to Moses and Abraham? If you can be a little bit more specific, maybe I'm just missing it here. Okay. Let me see. Okay. Moving on down. Yeah, Nikki, when we start getting a grasp of this, and this is my burden right now, is for us to take a look at this. Now, this is, we're looking at the Rock of Gibraltar, with a magnifying glass right now. But if we get an idea, it helps us. But we need to break away from the stilted thought of, I've got it. How many times have we heard somebody say this, and I just have to cringe when somebody says it, and I don't mean to offend anybody on here, but I want to be reality. And somebody says, well, if I can't have my pets, then it's not heaven. Oh, dear friend, do you know what you're saying? Okay, God, this is the line. I will not be, you have no idea what you're saying. You really don't. Or somebody says, and I have actually had this. We've seen this at least twice in the past month. Somebody goes, I don't care what anybody else says. This is what heaven's going to be like. And there's no quoting of scripture. Okay, so we're gonna delve into this. All right. Let me see. Darius, are the two witnesses in Revelation, are they going to be real people on earth during the tribulation? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Darius. You're referring to Revelation chapter 11. Look at it. They are really assassinated and they really are resurrected. They really do have a protection of God by holy judgment, as you see. When they're attacked, they are able to, for a time, they are real people. Yes. Look in Revelation chapter 11 and you will see that. All right. Hippie. What is a sea of glass? Is it ice? The Bible does not tell you. Ice would be a different reference. Glass is glass in the Greek on there. And it's crystalline in Ezekiel chapter 1. Ezekiel looks up through the crystalline floor into heaven and sees one on the throne, ablaze in the holy judgment of God on the throne here too. There are a couple of thoughts as to what it signifies. There are things, for example, there's no more unpredictable sea, uncontrollableness. God has everything fixed. So the sea is fixed and safe, not, unpredictable and intimidating. The second thing is the Jewish nation, we are told by scholars, had an abject horror of deep water. The terrors underneath of which is why the symbolic presentation of the Antichrist in Revelation chapter 13, he comes out of the deep water and they go, you see, it's nothing but evil and turmoil. And that's the symbolism in there. Uncontrollable and deep and unknowing. Here it is. It's fixed, it's clear, it's clean, and it is under God's control. There's a couple of thoughts on that. Okay. Hippie, why does God associate himself with gold? Is he's gold different from earthly gold? It could be a couple of things. Gold is very, very rare to find. You're going to have to dig and sweat and labor to find it. And that's why when somebody just comes along and flippantly just refers to God, but the pursuers of God, of Yahweh, he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him, the book of Hebrews says. That's one of the things. All right. Well, believe it or not, we got 1 more minute. I can put in about 1 or 2 more questions here. And I thank you for being so helpful as we are, in your understanding here and taking a look as I've shown this. I usually don't do this. But whenever I go into and I show something on the screen, it's always like, okay, I don't want to lose anybody. But thank you for this, okay? All right. Let me see. Julia, I would be glad to explain these things, but I will ask my friends, when you go to a reference, if you might be able to give me an idea of what you're asking. I've got to get going here. It is 9:30. So if you all might write me, and same with Dad, write out your verse, 1 Peter 5:10, and what you're asking about that verse. Go over to my email. I'm going to be after I go down and take the car, taking a look at, then I'm going to be back and I'm going to be chained to the desk and I'll be going back and forth to the emails. Write me at brad@theheaventour.com, brad@theheaventour.com, and then if you might put this in the reference and specifically what you're asking. The reason I say this is you have some verses in which there are pastors that could spend 3 weeks on one verse because of the depth of this. So say, I have a question about this within this verse, and that will help me out to be able to go. Because more than once in earlier times, I've gone through a whole discussion, somebody goes, well, that's not what I was asking at all. All you did was you just gave me a verse, okay? So help me help you, okay? All right, so friends, I'm going to go back into here Tuesday night over in TikTok, 9 o'clock to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to have that time. So looking for this wonderful time that we are all together here. Thank you so much, moderators. Thank you. As we've run through this and start off the Monday, and I can't thank you for your prayers of protection. Please continue to do so. And I think that we're going to be okay. Take a look at the car today and some wonderful people just down the road here. Help me out, okay? Moderators, thank you for your help. Friends, thank you for being here. God bless you. Take care. Lord willing, we'll talk soon.